Hi everyone. Okay, is the mic working? Doesn't look like that's working. Why is that not working? Maybe it is. I'm going to get someone to help me with a sound check in a moment. That looked like something that worked. So this lights on, which is odd. Okay, good. Let's put that in the back. There. Is that moving? Okay, while I'm sorting out the sound, because the sound was terrible last night. Let's sort out the lights. Okay, so someone's going to help me. Carla, I think, is going to be logging on in a moment. And, oops. Right, Is that too dark? Oh, that changes them. This is why I need a studio. And studio people. Okay, Carla, are you online? Yeah, is that your tag? Is it Pata? Oh, hi Ash. Good to see you're online as well. So Carla, you can hear me. Brilliant. That's great because the little dial isn't going up. So I'm going to check the light now. Brilliant. So we can all give a shout out to Carla, who we've known for a while now, who's come to some of the online stuff that I do. And we've also got Adit Sharma, which is Ash, which is my son. And so a shout out to Ash, because he's also supporting me, which is great. And as you can see, guys, tech isn't my best feature. So tonight, the first session, so I've got the lights and the mic sorted now. The sound quality last night wasn't brilliant when I checked the videos, but I have uploaded the videos, 3 separate videos that I did yesterday. Today, the first part is going to be the Oracle pull, and I'm going to give a little bit of a description to say a little bit about how I work with the Oracle. If you're new to my page, you're new to any of the different things I do. So I do the Oracle, I do some podcasts, I've got the travel videos, and it's all about creating a life, that I enjoy, that I want to share with you, or a soloed life. So I write about soloed life also on Substack, so you can join me on Substack. The links are underneath the videos. Once I've edited them, after I come off air, I edit them, and then I just sometimes change the title, because what seems to happen is I pull the cards, I've no idea what's going to come out, and I'm using today the Colette Baron-Reid Enchanted Map, and these are the ones I'm using for the free cards, and I've done a few readings with this so far, and it was really interesting to see the direction of travel it went in yesterday. So bear with me. I am also looking to put the time points on each video. So there's some little crowns on there, #1. So if anyone wants to let me know what that little crown #1 means, does that mean you are the both star of the show at the moment? If that's the case, that's true, because it may be, I think it means top fans. But Ash, you're great on the marketing side of things, so maybe you know a bit more about what some of these things mean online. So I'm using the Colette Baron-Reid card. So I blend the meaning of the card that Colette's been around for well over, I think, 30 years. She's been designing and doing Oracle card readings. So she was well ahead of her time. We've got loads of tarot and Oracle online at the moment, but I don't use it as a predictive tool. I use it to see what messages come out of the card, and then if that aligns with anything that comes up for me, anything I've experienced, any of the client work or themes that I have that emerge through the work. And often when we click on something that we feel drawn to, if we're looking at it through the spiritual lens, it can be that there's just something there for us that we can connect with, that might be relating to a theme that we have going on in our life. So the idea is as well, because if you've been following any of my travel videos, you know that I've had a camper van and I do some house sits, and while I'm away and at home, I write about the diaries. I write my travel diaries, and I also have now decided to start recording some of what I like the travel diaries that I write about. So that's going to be ordinary days, simple life, or ordinary days, simple days. So Carla, you just want to give me a yes to let me know you're still there, because I wanted to check something with you. If you can put that in the chat, that'd be great while I shuffle the cards. Fabulous. Right. So I've no idea, I've not seen Carla for a few weeks, but if any of this resonates, let me know. You don't have to tell me straight away, because I'm going to pull the 3 cards. And sometimes what helps is you can listen to an oracle session. So in my daily recordings, it's 1 card, 1 message that is uploaded on YouTube every day, just the 1 card. And these are 3 cards, so they turn into a bit of a longer story and have more themes going through them. And if you resonate with it, but you wanted to take some notes, or you kind of forgot some of the central messages, rather than replaying the whole thing again, you can copy the transcript and have the transcript and copy and paste that onto a document, and then you can highlight any of the things that stood out for you, so you don't have to write reams and reams. So I have a tendency to write reams and reams, and I have a tendency just to write the odd note as well. Okay, so let's tune in. And Carl, if you've got any questions, you can ask me a question at any point, because I want to try and develop the whole sort of idea of Q&A. But if you've got any questions, if I can answer them, I will. But we'll start with pulling the card. Okay, so I didn't have any. What often happens is a lot of people, their cards jump out, but clearly mine don't want to jump. But there's nothing that's kind of sticking out at the moment either. So maybe that one. Sometimes it's just the ones that whoa, nearly lost all those. Now they all want to jump out. Oh, and while I'm doing this, I actually tried to catch a little bird that's the size of a robin today. There's another one. While I was sat in the conservatory, I was working with clients online in the conservatory with my laptop in the corner. The doors are all open. It's a sunny day, even though it's been raining. And a little bird about that big flies in. They're really cute. But it can't find its way out, and it kept on crashing into the ceiling and everything. So I was really worried about the bird. And I said to my client, can you hang on a minute? I'm going to have to go and try and rescue this bird. So I'm going to talk more about these ordinary days of living in the countryside. There's another one. Okay, so we've got 3. So let's see what comes out. So I have no plan, no script. I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing on the next one. Spark, compass, and education. I've got a feeling maybe it's a spark. Don't know which one came first, to be honest. I have to be honest about what I'm doing and not doing. Now, I don't know if you can see this card because the light isn't great. And I'm going to try and it work. It's a bit better. But so it looks like she's playing the violin, and spark instantly is something that sparks your creativity. And as you can see, there's lots of red in the card and green. So green can often be associated with the heart chakra. She's wearing a dress, but she just looks like she's in complete flow. and playing the violin. And you can see a lady as well, yeah. And she looks like she's wearing, yeah, I think it's a dress, and almost like drips of hearts coming off the violin. So she's just in complete flow, green hair, green dress. So there's a lot of imagery in this. I do find it a bit harder to read the imagery of these cards. So I'm going to give you the meaning of this one, and then what we do is we do the same with the others, and then maybe they tie up together. So in terms of spark, there is a spark of creativity in you, and you have every reason to move forward with optimism and hope. Open yourself to inspiration and allow life to show you its beauty and your part in co-creating it. This is a perfect time to give birth to an idea, start a relationship or job, or begin any endeavour. Attraction is high as you connect with others who can co-create your joyous experiences and join with you in expressing the finer aspects of life. Watching a spark turn into a flame and stoking that fire is a gratifying activity. So spark is often associated with the creative experience. And like I said, I wasn't sure if that one came up first, so we'll see what it relates to. But it's basically saying connect with any little sparks that you get at the moment. So the next card that came out potentially was was it? No, education. And that's 35. Oh, another green dress, a stork, and what else is that? Now she's focused on what she's reading. She's sat on the rocks. Remind me of the rocks I was sat on yesterday at Seaside. We sort of see the moon, so it's late in the day. And I guess that is, it's almost like, is that a little is that a little person that is jumping out of the book? So again, lots of green, clear sky, and the stork. Now, I don't know what the stork's associated with, so that's 35, so 34 and then 35. So education, life is filled with lessons, be teachable. Wisdom comes from participating in life, not just reading about it. And that's really interesting because that connects to the next session I'm going to do. Sorry, I just heard something. This card suggests that you might not have enough knowledge about what you seek, the direction to take, your circumstances, or the nature of your inquiry. Important information is coming. Now is the time to go to school, ask a person who might know more than you, or find a teacher or a course of study that you can clearly understand what the next action must be. Sometimes life unexpectedly sends you to an unfamiliar school and you must learn by experience. Now is the time to be teachable, open to changing your preconceived notions. Be a student and be willing to state the most powerful mantra of all, I don't know yet. Now that's interesting because we can think about education in terms of classic, go to school, go to college, do a course. But the other aspects about learning from experience is, I think I wrote about this a fair bit when I was in Kent doing the Wellbeing Festival, because I never know who I'm going to meet, who I'm going to have conversations with, and what's going to yield out of those conversations. And there was a lot of conversations around women going through transition. There was a lady that had had a baby and what her experience was like, and she was only just able to get back out and go to wellbeing events. So she was sort of learning about herself as a new mother through that experience. And the other lady had just been diagnosed with ASD, and she was learning how that diagnosis had influenced her throughout her life. So she was quite keen to find out more and about how she could navigate some of those changes better. So education can be formal, like you want to learn, painting, do art, take up a musical hobby, or advance, like for me, I've been exploring how I can expand some of the things I do. I've been learning how to use Patreon or Substack. But learning through experience is sometimes just the conversations you have with random people when you're on the road or when you're at work, and you just have that aha moment that says, okay, that answers something I've been thinking about. It's helped me with a tech problem. It can be something small like that. So this is just about being open and receptive. Now, I can't figure out what the stork has to do with that. So if anybody has any symbolic, I could look it up. When you look at shamanic practice, they use a lot of animal totems, and the stork might represent something. So maybe I'll look at that in a moment. But the next card that we pull is the compass. So what was interesting, I was really getting some... I went to Wells Cathedral the other day, and they actually said, and I've never figured this out before, but it must be a way a lot of the cathedrals are designed. It's almost like it's a central shape, like an oblong, but it has wings coming off it, and each wing is related to east, west, south, north and south. And so east, of course, is where the sun comes up in the morning and the light shines through the windows, and you can clearly see the architecture and the messages and the stories that are in those stained glass windows. And I've never really thought about the actual structure and why they're designed in that way. And so now we've got a compass, and the compass clearly is a tool, that we used to use or hankers still use. But when the phones run out or Google Maps doesn't work and you've got a compass in your pocket, if you've got an idea of where north or south is, where you want to get back to, a compass is great in helping you go in that right direction. So let's see what Colette's interpretation of this is. As long as you orientate your compass to true north, the direction of your higher power, you'll never be lost. So the idea in spiritual circles is when we're born, we come with, we're born into our families, and we learn a set of beliefs and values and social conditioning that sort of stays with us for a long time. And as we get into adulthood and have new experiences, we start to shed some of that conditioning, because either we believe that conditioning, those ideas, that culture, those beliefs don't fit us anymore, or don't fit us in the same way. So the idea is in astrology is we're moving from the south node towards the north node. And the north node is your soul path, where you are walking towards your higher power, your actual direction. And these are often the gifts that we're born with, but not all gifts come online when we're 20 or 30. Some gifts come online at different stages of our life. And at that point, it's often, and I've wrote about this in the Soul-Led Life, it's often when we start to feel the rub or a bit bored in our job, or a bit bored of the area that we're living in. It's often that's our sort of soul calling, saying, move further in that direction. You might be more aligned with that place, that work, those people now. And so we can go through an actual shedding process. And sometimes that can feel quite difficult, because that can involve not spending as much time with the people that we used to, or doing the things that we used to, while we navigate or reorientate ourselves and move more towards what fits, what feels better, what works. And that can mean all sorts of different things, because everyone's an individual. So we're all at different phases of our life, and maybe having that sense, but it can manifest in different ways. So if you're entering uncharted territories right now, you can expect wonderful new experiences. So this can mean, this card, that, so when we link that with spark and education, the creative idea has been sparked. You are navigating towards doing something that feels creative, that feels good, in flow. And you could say that might involve experiences or education, a short course. But actually what that means is, when the compass card comes up, is that you're moving further towards the idea of your higher path and your destiny. So for example, if you've always loved something as a kid, what a lot of people say is, in order to try and find your true purpose, it's often associated with the things that you loved as a kid. And Sometimes we can do those for joy and fun, and other times we can monetize that, and that can become a business. So you can be into music and then open up a guitar shop, you know, or write music, or work in festivals. You know, you can be involved in something that you've always had passion for. And so that they're the gifts that we also are born with, and everybody's born with some gifts that they can utilize at different phases of life. So it says, to stay on the highest path of your destiny, you'll need to keep your compass pointed to true north. Only spirit or higher power can serve this function. And often that can be where we feel quite uncertain, because this is where the brain and the mindset can get in the way, because your brain will be saying, well, how am I going to do that? That won't work out. Or, you know, what do I need to do next? Whereas sometimes it relies on us using our intuition more. But it says money, property, prestige, romance, or any other material achievements can't help you find your true path. They can give you, you can experience happiness, you can enjoy all those things, but it doesn't mean to say that that is actually the true path that you're on. They are simply things that you may experience along the journey. So they're not wrong. It's not wrong to work in the corporate world and earn loads of money, just as it's not wrong to travel around the world and spend all your money. And, you know, they're all different experiences, and we all come to a point in which we may say, I've had those experiences and now I want a new set. So know that spirit is working in your life. So even if you feel lost temporarily, it will be easy to find your way. Have faith and trust. So again, it's coming out of the brain and certainty and trying to figure things out, and sitting back and saying, do you know what, I have trust that I'm moving in the right direction. And one of the key indicators can be, if you are deciding, so I was talking to one of my clients about this week, about when we hit a fork in the road. And I've had this with 3 clients over the last few months, where they've been deliberating on a decision, but they're at different phases of trying to work out whether to go in that direction or that direction. And the brain can say, well, what's good about that? What's good about that? Well, how will I do that? Or where will I get that job from if I move? So for one client, it involved a move to a completely different city, but not changing her job because she works from home. Another client, it's about moving back to a city that she always loved, from an area that she's lived in for a while that has served its purpose. But each time, each person feels a lot of fear and can get really stressed and say, oh, because I'm feeling fear, this must mean that this isn't the right path for me. This is not the right direction to go in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that. And that's one of the tricky things, because the ego can bring up all this fear about, what if I go down that path? What if I do this? What if I do that? So I also explore with the clients, well, what's the worst that could happen? If you go in that direction, what's the worst? You've done a course, you did 3 months, you had that experience, you loved it, or you didn't. Or you moved to another city and you lived there for a year, and then you thought, no, actually, I've realised I really want to live in the countryside, or I want to live in the city. So I've been dabbling with some of those ideas as I move around different locations, because it helps me also figure out what I absolutely love and love the idea of when I make a permanent move, and what I don't really want to be a part of that future plan. So this is about being able to have that trust and faith, and ensure that you'll never be lost, even on a starless night when all seems dark. So even when it all seems dark on a starless night, there's still this compass and that magnetic draw towards doing something that you've been considering a direction of travel. And that can be one small step, or it can be something bigger. So does anyone want to ask me any other questions that has come up as a result of listening to what I read out on these 3 cards? Because it's very different from what came out yesterday. And it's clearly the message is about moving forward, but towards your true north with faith and trust. So would anyone like to ask any questions? If you do, put it in the chat. And if you want I can even pull another card if you would like to know more. Let me know what you think. It's interesting on these cards because they feel very positive. They feel like there's something already in flow. And it's just about being open and receptive to learning some more. And I can say how that's working for me because I've been exploring with somebody using a different platform to connect it with my website. And my brain tends to go, oh no, it's technical. I don't know if I want to do that. But I thought, no, but just be open and receptive, Mal, to what they share with you rather than thinking, you know, I've got to, you know, either say yes or no. So I thought I'll listen to them. They gave me a demonstration. I've started thinking about what I already do, whether this will save me time or whether it's a lot of effort, you know, for no reason. So let's have a look. We've got a question. You're about to start a new project and sometimes you feel fear or question if you should do it or not. Ah, interesting. So that was what I was referring to that I've noticed in my last 3 clients. So sometimes when we're about to take a leap or a step forward, and it can feel daunting or big, even if it's not big. So let me see if I can give you some examples that may relate to whatever your project is. So a project, as you know, can be, I can take on a project, say a writing project for the 3 weeks that I'm in Devon. So would I have some fear about that if I said to myself, I'm going to do it? I might have some trepidation and think, what are people going to think about what I write? What if I get questioned, you know, and all sorts of fears can come up. Or there might be another project that involves me doing a 6-month piece of work and the stakes are higher because if I put energy and effort into that, it may close down the energy I've got available to do other things. So based on what's come out so far, that's clearly sounding like there's been a spark. And what one of my clients said was one that was wrangling over whether or not to move 4 hours to a brand new city. She had so much fear and was really thinking, oh, that must mean that I shouldn't do it. So we spent a lot of times exploring, what will you lose if you do it? What will you win if you do it? What will you lose if you don't do it? And what will you win? And over time, she wrangled with it for a bit, but over time it was like, well, what's the cost if you go and do that? So the ego can be there to protect us and the brain is there to protect us. And so if our body, especially if we've had some issues in the past, our body can sometimes misinterpret the next step as threatening. And if we sense any kind of threat or we start to believe some of what our thoughts are telling us, like you can't do that, it won't work, it won't be any good. If you believe those inner thoughts, that activates the stress chemicals in the body, the adrenaline, non-adrenaline, all the stress chemicals, and we feel the fear, and the fear can feel like trepidation. So not all fear is wrong, and it's not always your ego saying, you know, don't do it. So there's more to, shall I do that project or not? But if this is something that feels like light, excitable, if it feels intriguing. So my client has moved to the new city and she went back to the old city last week to tidy up the apartment, hand in the keys, and then was on the train. And I said, how did that go? And she said it was a bit surreal in some ways. I said, well, how do you feel coming back to the new city that she's been in now for 2 weeks? And she said, actually, I get these little moments of excitement about the potential for all the new things I can do because there's a lot of different things that are going on. So that little spark she gets of excitement, of that curiosity and that intrigue and, oh, what else is going on in the city is what is moving her forward now. So yes, our brain does try and protect us. So if you think about being a human, the job of the brain is to filter all the data that we get and to keep us safe. So if you're walking down a dark street, for example, most of us know that we might feel a bit unsafe. But the brain is going to be scanning, the nervous system and the brain is going to be scanning to see if there's any threat. So you can decide whether to fight, flight, or roll over. So that's quite an obvious one to a lot of people, because you're saying, you know, if I'm walking down the street and I feel a bit scared, of course I'm going to feel fear. But there was a time a couple of years ago when I was asked, but I also had to pay towards doing it, to speak at Birmingham NEC and have a stall there. And it was a leap from what I'd been doing before. So even if it's similar to what you've been doing before, and my anxiety levels went really high. And I spoke to this trusted spiritual healer coach that I contact every so often. And I said to him, I don't know what's going on, but I've paid this now. They booked me on, I've got 2 talks to do. It's over 4 days. I'll have this stall, which is fine. But I'm having this massive anxiety and I'm really scared. And he said to me, no, you're excited. And I said, no, I can assure you I'm not. But what was happening is, because my brain, and many of us, our brain will interpret the event coming up, even if we're looking forward to it, we might start saying, who's going to be there? What will they think of me? What about how I dress, how I look? What will happen when I walk through the door? And if you start entertaining thoughts like that, the stress chemicals kick in and your brain is now scanning for danger, so that when you go to that venue, your brain is now saying, who's looking at you funny? Who's looking at your clothes? Who's doing this? If you say to yourself instead, I'm going to that venue, I am a bit anxious, I haven't walked over that threshold, but I'm sure there are nice people there. You can say to your brain, okay, help me spot nice people that maybe I can have a good conversation with. But on a very basic human level, especially if we've experienced things in the past where our nervous system is a bit more activated than average, our brain is going to scan to see if there's any danger. And so that fear can come up, but whether it's a case of should I do it, should I not? If you said, okay, it's going to cost me, say, £50 to be involved in this project or do this course, and I might say, okay, can you risk that if you do it? And then you change your mind and you might say, well, yes, okay. So what's the worst that can happen? Okay, I do the course and I love it, or I don't and I regret it. Well, why regret an experience? Because you're not now going to bed every night thinking, you know, maybe I should have done it. If it's something like now I'm going live, I wouldn't have even thought about doing this, right, in 2020. So in 2016 is where I wanted to start writing some blogs and put them on a website. In 2020, during COVID, everyone started working from home and we all went on Zoom. And a lot of us hadn't done, we used to do teleconferences where there was a big phone in the middle of the room, almost seems like watching Doctor Who now, going back into the past. So we all went on Zoom and we had to start doing presentations on Zoom. And part of those jobs were also standing up and doing presentations. But initially it was really scary. And then going on Zoom and chatting to people, we got used to that. We got used to working the tech, getting used to it glitching, freezing, seeing ourselves on Zoom, you know, all of that kind of stuff. That was the first phase. But that was, for me, like prep for what was to come that I hadn't planned. But I was only posting my photography on Instagram. My son had given me a tablet. That had been the spark to when I used to go and visit him at uni. I would go around afterwards, take some pictures. That was the creative spark. I followed the compass. I got the camera, learned how to use it more, and then started posting on Facebook and Instagram. But initially, when you post something, you might be, and I know you've been posting some stuff on Instagram of some of the stuff you're painting, which is beautiful. And initially you might be thinking, you know, that stuff that goes through your head, oh my God, what will people think? It's not as good as other people's, you know, that internal dialogue. But when we follow the spark and the compass, it can also be very daunting, because we are connecting with our true gifts, we're connecting with something that matters, and that can provoke a lot of fear, like, what will they think about us? What if I make a mistake? So initially, I took what felt like a big risk, but it was now looking back a smaller risk, of posting on Instagram. Posting on Facebook was easier because I had friends on there, so they might just say, oh, that's a really nice picture. Then when I started writing blogs and putting them on the website, the same fear come up. But I was too motivated to do the things that mattered, that I enjoyed. Because if you've been in a job that robs you of joy and it's soul draining, or you're in a constant state of stress, when you start finding things that you enjoy, you need to build on them, because that's all part of just what we're aligning with, however long that is. And then the next step might be that you post a few other things that maybe you wouldn't. So on Substack, I'm writing stuff that are things that maybe I wouldn't have shared a couple of years ago. So we go on this journey where we expand. But in that process, like with the compass, it's about faith and trust. So if you look at some of the biggest artists, music artists, art artists, people who do, that are now renowned for big pieces of work, is they, I mean, if you look at someone like Eminem, for example, he might have always wanted to go on stage, but my goodness, he put himself in the ring, you know, to an audience that may initially have been quite anti, you know, what he was singing about or who he was. And so sometimes soul journeys feel scary and feel like big leaps and feel daunting, because we're meant to take that step and take that leap. But I can't do a sweeping generalization that every project, everything we do is the right idea. But I just know that ever since I started studying, I met what felt like a gap and I was expanding. And each time I got to that point, the fear and anxiety of being seen and what would people think and what would they say about my work would come up. And initially it was in a small circle on my counselling training. And then it was writing my masters, where people are reading your work and critiquing it. And you put yourself out there, and it's putting that on a website, and then it's standing up and teaching, and then doing yoga teacher training, and going to Ibiza, where there was luckily 2 other women of my age, and both of them were much fitter than me, and not being able to do headstands and, you know, a perfect downward dog, and carrying a couple of pounds more or stone than the other people. So there's all sorts of things that our brain, our internal dialogue, our internal critic will be saying. And that comes up more when we start to feel a bit uncertain. That's why, and it's tricky. So I was talking to a client the other day, says it sounds a bit biblical, but it's not. You can be religious or not and still buy into the idea, I will have faith and trust regardless. The universe has my back. And I know that every time I put myself out there, it's moved me to the next stage of what I've been involved with. And each stage felt daunting. But you know, sometimes after you've done it, after you've gone on stage and sang your first song, after you've posted your first painting, after you've wrote your first article or stood up and spoke in front of 100 people, you get a rush of exhilaration afterwards. All that fear and that anxiety then turns into, oh my God, I can't believe I did it. And we forget that there's sometimes a really beautiful payoff at the end. Even if 1 or 2 people liked it, you know, when I started standing in front of people talking, and they used to talk about this on body language courses, you've got someone in the audience that's kind of sat there, it looks like their face is really straight and they're not enjoying anything you're saying. our brain can interpret that. If they don't like it, I'm not doing very good, you know. And when I've talked to other places, sometimes what they say is you just lock into one person, you look at that person when you're talking. And at that time, my brain's going, you know, what's going on? And then you get too conscious, and where you're too conscious, it gets in the way. And then afterwards, you can have 6 or 7 people come up and go, oh, wow, that was great, that was inspiring. And so it depends also of why you're doing what you're doing and what it is you hope to achieve. For me, often, especially when I started my counselling training, because I was so shy when I was growing up and I wouldn't stand up and chat in front of anyone. It was a competition I was having with myself. It was a personal shift and thing that I could say, I did it, I made it happen. We can have supportive people around us, but I made the decision to make it work. So in terms of that question of fear and ego and the project, now I'm not saying, because I don't pull cards, as you know, as an interpretation, but let's see what follows these 3 cards, and it may or may not resonate. But it's interesting because it's come up as a theme. I was even having a conversation with a client tonight, and it's come up as a theme again, solitude. And we've got the solitude card. So what that might be saying is just spend some time when you've got lots of things roaming around in your head. And if you've got the inner critic, if you've got that inner voice that says, why are you doing it? What's wrong? What's the point in this? You know, what people are going to think, whatever that inner critic is, if you've got that in your head, you've got to find some way of silencing that. And often what that means is first be aware that that voice is there in what moment you're in, because it's some people it's there all the time, mine comes in and out. And then pay attention to it from a mindful way of observing it. So it's about sitting back and going, those thoughts are there again. Then you just don't feed into the thoughts, as in hook back into them and agree with them, because you'll find once you start watching your thoughts, you'll find that it's like following a train. If you follow your thoughts, you end up down the train track of continuous negative thinking and continuing the feeding the inner critic. If you sit back and take some deep breaths and say, I'm going to observe the thoughts, notice them, and imagine that there's several techniques, but you can imagine that those thoughts are just moving away like clouds, and instead either tune into a day out that you had was fun and amazing, or tune into the birds, as I've been doing, watching the birds feeding, or listening to the wind in the trees, listen to a piece of music that just makes you feel a bit like you're connecting with something bigger than you. That moves you out of that constant repetition and cycle. And so in solitude, which is why I like having a lot of time out, you have gaps in time where you can go, those thoughts have returned. And the idea is, and I'm not sure, I'm going to look this up, whether or not there's any research on it yet, but the idea is in a lot of different circles, if you pay attention to the thought, if you keep hooked to the thought, notice it and own it as though it's you, it takes about 16 seconds before that attracts more of those negative thoughts. So that inner critic gets bigger and bigger. It expands like you're feeding it, and it has more of a voice. But then it's like being on a train that's now going 80 miles an hour. Whereas if you sit back and notice the thought, you're not even stepping onto the train that's pulling out the platform. And if it's a slow train, you still have an opportunity to catch it. So some people, more than others, have a more likelihood that they have these internal negative thoughts operating all the time. But awareness is key. So I'm going to read the solitude card, and let me know if there's another question on that you want to ask. Because I, as you know, can go down all sorts of routes. Excuse me. So solitude, right. So the statement on solitude is, I am comfortable in my own skin as I detach to replenish my soul. So exactly along those lines, you detach, you observe, you notice what's going through your head, but you don't attach to it. That's kind of from the Buddhist concept of non-attachment. Meditation is required when you receive the Solitude card as a sign. Empty your mind of superfluous thoughts and allow stillness to flow through your whole being. Right, what does that mean? Sometimes these are hard things to really understand what I mean. You don't have to go into meditation and sitting on and try and empty your mind, because that can be almost impossible for a lot of people. But starting a mindful practice is much easier, and that's as simple as sitting back in your office chair, putting your headphones on, playing some music, or sitting in the garden listening to the birds, and just trying it for 5 minutes, and sitting back and noticing thoughts, noticing what's going through your head, and the quality of those. What are the things that it's saying? And then just observing that and not getting attached to that. So when you do that, what happens is psychically you're opening up space. They don't remain the dominant feature. So allow that stillness to flow through your whole being. And so it takes 3 to 5 breaths to switch out the stress mechanism where, like you said, is fear our ego. Well, if you think of something difficult that happened or something scary, your body's going to release stress chemicals within a microsecond. They're coursing through your body. So before they take hold and your body starts to get ready and prepared for action, to fight or flee, you need to notice that. So you can disrupt the pattern even if you're on that slow train and it started moving forward. So you just step back and take some deep breaths. So you can either do it through your nostrils, do it through your mouth, but the point is it takes, say, like 3 to 5 breaths to switch parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system around. So you go from stress into calm. You take the deep breath while you're sat there, and that is it. And when you feel the deep breath going into your body, just notice what part of your body you might feel tingling, you might feel calm. And this is your body giving you some signs or data that it's starting to turn the switch down. It's starting to relax and be still. Now, not everyone can be still for all sorts of reasons, but if you start that process and paying attention, that opens a gap in your consciousness, in your field, and those thoughts stop dominating. Will they come in again? Possibly, and you notice it again, and you say, oh, you're here again, let's go. And one thing that came out was quite interesting with the clients I was talking to. What we noticed is when they got overtired, or they hadn't eaten well, gone to bed really late, or spent too much time on tech, like staring at the laptop all day, or focused on one thing, they noticed that when it put them in a more vulnerable state and their anxiety increased. So we're starting to recognize a real connection between mind, body, and spirit. And even a lot of psychiatrists now are realizing we need to pay attention to all those different systems to see if there's a system that's out of sync. Because if so, it can increase more anxiety or adrenaline. And some people are more susceptible to anxiety for various reasons. And anxiety and low mood can be influenced by the food that we drink, for positive and negative. So step back, take the focus off life for a short while and your troubles. And you'll be surprised at how things sort themselves out once you replenish your energy by means of much needed rest and time out, which is quite difficult to do if you've got you were talking about sleep. So there's a lot of research around the quality of sleep that we have. And so if you are seeing a specialist, for example, around any sleep problems, so not necessarily a GP because they're not necessarily a specialist in a particular area, they might say that if you don't sleep well during the night, it may be that, if you get those really tired eyes in the daytime, and often people will burn out or start to feel that heaviness, it might be worth exploring whether or not the cat naps in the afternoon, like a 20-minute bite-sized piece of sleep, may help, because the brain's job is to manage and process sort of everything we've experienced during the day. We might dream. We go into REM sleep around, I think it's around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And I know that when I was going through really stressful periods at work, if I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and was usually waking up during REM sleep, and that's when you feel very dopey, your head is heavy, and it's almost like you're still a part of the dream. So maybe what to notice then, if you're doing the naps, and I've noticed, and I went on some advice that I got, because I used to go to sleep in the afternoon, and sometimes I could sleep for an hour or two, and sometimes I still have to do it. It's just an overhang of, experiences years ago. And I used to think, switching on the clock for 20 minutes, I'm going to wake up feeling like my head is just, just heavy, and it would take ages for me to wake up. But with the 20-minute naps, what I noticed, and I can do it more now, even sometimes I'm by the beach, and I can feel that, I don't know if you get that heaviness, or you just feel like your eyes want to close, and I just close my eyes like I'm doing a meditation, do some deep breathing, and just have that time out. I even did it in the cathedral the other day, because the energy in there was really quite intense. So I wasn't sure if I was sat up meditating or having a little nap, I don't know. But it's fine, because it's, I did that, and then 2 hours later I was on my bike in Mymed riding around. So we need to, they talk about this on a lot of podcasts in terms of performance. So it doesn't fit the same for everybody, but if you're, I think it's only about, if you lose 2 or 3 nights of sleep, that can then have a massive impact. But what doesn't help, that goes along, coincides with this, is entertaining the inner critic, entertaining, what's that? I was energyless today, around 4, had 30-minute nap. Interesting, yeah, so you feel like you've come a bit alive. Do you find that you're more awake in the morning, then you have a dip, and then more awake in the evening? Or, because sometimes people can have that where they're really alert in the morning and they can go on and write reports, for example. But like me, between 2 and 5, that's when I get this really, and if I'm working with anyone, I tend not to work. I occasionally have a client at that time. You're more awake in the morning. So this might also be, because you're getting disrupted sleep, it might also be about finding a pattern that works for you, but also becoming more in sync with your own biorhythms, I think they're called. So in the Industrial Revolution, everybody was brainwashed to think that work was 9 to 5. Well, it wasn't 9 to 5, it was probably 8 to 8 or something. And then you'd have the weekend off, which was like the recovery period. And so we're wired to believe that that's the way that it works for us, but it doesn't work for everyone. Sometimes, especially as we get older, we need to work out what our own natural rhythm or state is. So that might be the message, because you said you're feeling some fear about a project coming up, and as I said, I've got 3 clients at the moment. One who's just deliberating on some choices. The other one was really stuck in this, shall I go that way or that way, and had so much anxiety and fear, and they've done it, and they are having those moments where they feel really excited about what's going to happen next. So is it a small project? Is it a big project? Is it something with a big commitment? Or is the fear just an internal state of, yes. Now, the way to remember the universe has your back, one trick is to have a look. If you draw a timeline, have a look from today going backwards, is where else have you struggled a little bit sometimes to make a decision and do something and not being sure about it, and it's worked out. So that's where you get the evidence of where the universe has actually had your back. So I might go back to like when I was 18, when I left home, and it was like within a short time, I met a friend who said, "Why don't you consider this?" I did that. I got a job. I moved. I got some money. I wasn't sure what to do next. Then I spoke to someone else, and I got another job. And when I look back, I can see all of these things that kind of just occurred out of nowhere. It just took me to the next phase. But I think as we get older, sometimes we tend to think about it way more than we would if we were, 18, 20, 25. So I'm going to finish off on the Oracle session today. But as you know, the lives, I'm using these 3 cards. And this is the kind of theme or direction I'm taking it, which is let's draw 3 cards. I'll share some of what comes out in the book. If you want to do the same thing yourself, you can buy the pack and draw 3 cards, read from the interpretation in the book, and then notice, get into that really relaxed state, do a bit of mindfulness, notice what comes up for you, write it in your journal, and every time you do the cards, write it in your journal, and then look back after a couple of weeks to see if there's a theme. So if I have a look at the theme from yesterday was a little bit different from today. Yesterday was about clearing house, making space, but there was a theme around clearing, the sort of critical thinker. So I'm going to stop this session, but I'm going to log back on in about 5 minutes to do ordinary life and talk a little bit about some podcasts I've been listening to that also you might find interesting. So if you want to log back on, I'm just going to do it as a separate video so that I can upload it separately because I haven't worked out how to edit them yet. So thank you for your input as well. And if you want to come on the next session, just log back on again, or you might get the alert. If you've subscribed to my page, let me know if you get the alert if you do come back on, but no pressure. And I'm going to talk about a podcast that I was listening to today, but I think this might have something in this as well for you. So if you've got time, you want to log on, and I'll probably, I'm going to try and do less than an hour, and it might be half an hour, I don't know, because I'm noticing. So like I said, I'm going to log on in about 5 minutes. I've just got to rewrite the description. And I will see you on the next Oracle Live. Probably won't be tomorrow. It won't be Thursday. Maybe at the weekend I will do another one. But if you like and subscribe to my page, you should get the notifications. Thanks for listening and thanks for your input. Much appreciated.